I'm just going to go through a couple of quick notes that I have before we get into this. I'm really stoked to be here. I've been like hanging on this for months. I'm thinking a lot about what I'd want to talk about today, especially in lieu of where I went last year and how do I follow up on that. So we'll get going in a second. I just want to thank you guys at Concierge, everybody, all like 33 of you. I first met Laura and Chad in, I believe it was 2008, not too far after you started. And I broke rank because we typically don't, my firm, we don't work with small emerging companies or startups. But I was so attracted to what they were telling me they were doing. And I believed in their vision, that we worked with them on a small little project, and it's really awe-inspiring to see how you guys continue to grow year after year. So you got my total respect. Last year, how many of you were here last year when I spoke? Just so I have a, okay. What I talked about last year was this emerging disruption that was taking place in all walks of life. New companies emerging, releasing new ideas, new technologies. Concierge was certainly one of those new ideas that like came out of the woodwork that truly, just as Barbara said, why didn't Sotheby's or Christie's jump on this bandwagon? They were asleep at the wheel. And this is what's happening in the world. New ideas are emerging really quickly and taking the world by storm because legacy companies are just asleep at the wheel. I believe, if I remember correctly, one example I used was Kodak, and how when they started to file Chapter 11 was around the same exact time this whimsical little application called Instagram. You guys all know what Instagram is? They got funded with $60 million, and like 13 months later, when Kodak went out of business, this app that doesn't make any money was bought for $1 billion. And I said last year, like, you know, you could fold your arms and roll your eyes and like, you know, poo-poo it, but the reality is that this continues to happen. New ideas are taking the world by storm that legacy companies should be jumping on, and they're not. So what I kind of did was I encouraged everybody here to take a leap and continue to use this open mind that you already have. There's only 100 of you here, and there's probably 200 or so clients of Concierge. It's 200 agents out of 1 million agents that had the wherewithal to try something new and partner with a marketing agency that would help you sell real estate. That says something about you guys. All right? You're predisposed to thinking differently and trying new things. So last year I really tried to encourage you to keep that open mind, and what I'd like to do this year is, instead of fill it with sort of visionary stuff, get very tactical and talk about some things that you can do right now. But here's the caveat. Like, I know that some of you are really high-end agents that maybe only work with a half a dozen clients. You don't need to market. You really don't need to do anything other than be alive. How you got there, right? How Barbara got there, like you hear her story and you hear all the fun stuff about how she made it. And some of you, as you talk to your peers, you know, you hear their stories and how well they're doing. But there's a lot of little mechanics that go on in the day-to-day operation of building a brand. So I kind of want to go through some 10 ideas that will help you not so much build your personal brand, but ways in which you can differentiate yourself so that you could maybe sell yourself a little less hard at the beginning and have to maybe work a little less hard at the end to keep clients. And I do want to do one other thing this time. Last year I just spoke for an hour. And I don't really like doing that. I like having a conversation with people. So I want to make this really interactive. So hopefully you guys will all get involved in this presentation, because almost every slide I want feedback and I want to talk about this. And do the kind of thing that I do at work, which is I own a creative agency. We're an idea company. People come to us and want ideas. Some of those ideas tend to be a little wacky when they first get presented by us. But what's important is not necessarily the idea, but where we take the idea and where we end up with it and how we can apply it to each individual person. So I kind of want to take you through this sort of thinking, this think tank, this creative process that we go through with clients to see where we end up on the other side. So to start off with, I want to just play a little word association. Right? So I want you to Scream out words that come to your mind. This is, how many of you have kids? All right? So this is, do you recognize this? Toys R Us? Yes. All right, so playing word association. What's the first word or emotion that comes to mind when you think Toys R Us?
Painful.
Painful. That's interesting. Anybody else feel the same way?
So much.
Painful. You got it. Do you know why it's painful? Yeah, I mean, I have 4 children, and I remember I dreaded going here because within 10 minutes the crying began. And the reason is because the kids couldn't get into anything. Everything was locked behind wrapping, high up on shelves. What does Toys R Us sell? They sell toys, right? They sell toys. That's the business they're in. They sell toys. I'm going to show you how that's not really a good way to build your brand and build your company if what you are associated with is either pain or the category you're in. And this really applies to real estate because when you think about real estate agents, what business are you in? What do you sell? You sell houses, right? But there's got to be more to it because there's a million of you that sell houses. So let's juxtapose that against FAO Schwarz. Have you ever been to FAO Schwarz? Maybe some of you haven't, but you might have an emotion about it still, right? So what emotion comes to mind? What words come to mind when you think fun?
Well done.
So we're on the same page. The word I use is wonderment, right? But see, there's a reason why these brands are brands, because we all have we all think the same way about it, right? So what does FAO Schwarz do differently? Totally, right? Parents, and the thing about going to FAO Schwarz as a New Yorker, I've gone there many, many times. It's so much fun. It's even for an adult. You start to like it. It unleashes the child inside of you. And they very, very purposely do that, right? So would you say that FAO Schwarz is in the toy business? They sell toys, but are they in the toy business? People think of FAO Schwarz as like the second, I've heard terms like it's where dreams come true, which is what is usually assigned to Disneyland or Disney World. And people consider this like the second Disney World. Like that's what they are in the business of. Fun and wonderment and where dreams come true. They don't sell toys. Okay, let's take this a little further. Zappos. Everybody here know what Zappos is, I'm sure. What word comes to mind or feelings, emotions come to mind when you think Zappos?
Tony Hsieh.
Tony Hsieh. What does Tony Hsieh represent? What's he all about? What does Zappos do? So I hear sell shoes.
Light touch, great service.
Great service. I heard deliver or something.
Free shipping.
Free shipping.
Easy return.
Easy return. What do all those things lead to from an emotion standpoint? Does that make you feel good? All right. You know, so Zappos doesn't only sell shoes. They deliver happiness. Now, about 5 or 6, I know Tony, and about 5 or 6 years ago I got invited to take a private tour of Zappos. And I got to meet a guy named Dr. Vic, who is the resident director of happiness within the company. So they not only deliver happiness to customers by allowing you to order as many shoes as you want or as many articles of clothing. They sell many other things in shoes, but you can return all of them, free shipping. But that happiness extends internally. There is a department that is dedicated toward making sure its employees are happy. So if you're not feeling very good, you can go into Dr. Vic's office. I wish I had a photo of me in his office because there's a big throne where you sit on a throne, you put on a crown. So you're sitting way up and Dr. Vic is sitting below and you talk to Dr. Vic about how you're feeling. So this is a brand through and through. Like what they say, they actually act upon. Have any of you ever read the Zappos Culture Book? It's a really cool book because it's so, I see one hand up, 2 hands up. The Culture Book has got statements from employees who work there and how they feel about working there. And a common theme, which sounds insane, is that employees who go on vacation tend to come back early to come back to work because they have more fun there than they do where they go, which is bizarre in itself, but that's really what makes them not a shoe business. They're not even a profitable business, but they sold for $8 billion. So like, it's just, this is like what today's world is all about. There's equity in other things than just money. What word comes to mind when you think FedEx? Reliable, that's an interesting word. Have you guys ever noticed the invisible arrow in FedEx? Have you noticed the invisible spoon in Fed? If you look at the E, there's like a spoon in the white space. Very clever identity. So the word that I associated to them is speed. When I think FedEx, I think speed. Do you guys relate to that? Right? But conversely, UPS, right? They're in the same sort of business, but you said reliable. Like that was the word I kind of played to UPS. When you do surveys or read stuff about these companies like trust, reliability, it's very different than speed. Right? When you want something to get there fast, you go FedEx. When you want something to get there and you want to make sure it gets there, you go UPS. They're in the same business, but there are differences between them. And it goes right down to even the color palette. There's something about brown that when you do color examination and color psychology, the color brown really exudes sort of trust and reliability. All right, so when this guy in brown, in the brown truck, shows up at your place to pick up a package, like you give it to that person without thinking twice. But here's where brands sort of break down. What would happen if this guy showed up to pick up your package? Would anybody give him your package? Probably not. Some of you might take a package from him, but that's a different business entirely that UPS is not aware of, okay? Abercrombie Fitch. If you have young teenagers, you know this brand, like what comes to mind immediately?
Anti-Semitic.
Anti-Semitic. I had no idea.
There you go.
Okay. That's not where I wanted to go. Okay. But you know, there might be some truth to that because like the vibe I get from them is that they're a brand that's for people a lot better looking than I am. But so these guys, do they know their customer or not? Their customer is like 14 to 16 or maybe 12 to 16-year-old girls. Their stores are filled with guys like this, like they totally know their customer. And the thing I really oftentimes go through with clients that I work with in real estate is that when I ask real estate folks who your customer is, I keep hearing everybody. Now when you think about Concierge as a brand for a second, like who's their customer? It's not everybody. In fact, they're hugely selective, which is oftentimes things that I think are big brand mistakes is when you cross over into everybody and don't focus and don't understand who your customer is. Do you know what airline this is? I don't even have the logo up there and you know. All right, what feeling do you get from Virgin? What words come to mind? And like guys, while you're thinking about this, like I want you to start thinking about what words come to mind when you think of yourself and your place in the world with your customers. How do they think of you? The word that I keep coming back to is an oasis. When you walk through an airport and come upon this, they're like an oasis in the middle of a very barren desert. In fact, when you see Virgin sandwiched between US Airways and a United, you just look at the gate attendants from both airlines, just they're like looking at Virgin longingly, like wishing they could just like unchain themselves and just cross over the carpet. But here's the thing I want you to take away. What does Virgin do that's different? What makes this airline different than other airlines? Little things. Little things. You see that white table? It's not black or gray. It's white. Color. Color. That color extends to, you know that airplane that you fly, that Airbus 330, whatever? It's the same airline as a United or American or US Airways. It's the same exact plane except for one difference. The purple light. Little, little, little things. And I think in the world of branding, especially today, it's just a combination of little, little things that make a difference, that can make you memorable. What comes to mind when you think of Concierge? What words come to mind? Class. And do you realize, like, the words I come up with is control. Think about this reality, like, what they bring to a seller is something sellers have never truly had in the real estate experience, which is control. And by bringing this partner in with you, you are giving a seller something that they normally don't get from other agents. That bodes well on your personal brand. Luxury, success, empowerment, these are powerful words that are also part of your own personal thing as you deliver. As we finish this little segment up, what word comes to mind when you think super fast red sports car? What do these guys sell? Did I hear sex? That's exactly what I came up with. Right? They're selling that. I mean, you don't see women driving Ferraris. You see women helping sell them, but not driving them. What word comes to mind when you think Victoria's Secret? Right? We think of it as a gateway to something completely different. Right? The reality that I've come across through all my years being in this is a real estate agent. I just took a picture off of her website from Florida. What words come to mind when you see that? Animal sex. Animal sex. Yes, that dog is definitely confused right now. See, this is a problem. It's a beautiful photograph, but there's a problem here. And we want to try to eliminate that problem here. Because this is really the problem that I've noticed as a branding person, that throughout the greater global world of real estate, there's too much ubiquity, there's too much sameness across the board. Now, I know you're all individuals and you all are different people and you wear different clothes and stuff like that, but the truth is, in your line of work, the contracts that people sign are the same across the board. The lockboxes you use are all the same across the board. If you have IDX on your websites and you're in the same market, you all have the same exact merchandise. If you're using the same vendors, you have the same website. So like the things that you do that are differently are usually hidden behind your cubicle or behind your office or in your apartment or Starbucks, wherever you work. That's where the magic happens that people never see. So when you ask consumers and you show them brands, Century 21, Coldwell Banker, Sotheby's, whatever, they keep saying the same thing, real estate. They are tying you to a category and not something bigger and greater. And what brands have learned and discovered is that when you're known for something other than your category, you don't have to sell as hard, and you don't have to work as hard to keep a customer. And we all have brands that we're loyal to, right? They don't have to advertise to you. They have to market to you. Sure, it's nice when you get a sale from them, but really, if you are into a clothing brand, you just every so often just stop in and see what's new. So we want to break that. That's what I want to do here today. I want to get down to some tactics that can help you sort of extend this great thing that you are in ways that are tangible that you probably haven't thought of. And I'll be honest and tell you up front, these are all really simple things. I'm not going to go deep. I'm just going to go kind of easy and things that you can maybe do tomorrow. Because I believe that building brand is not about the car you drive. This is where a lot of agents, I think, fall short. Right? They get that fancy car and they think now they're a luxury agent. Because I drive a Beamer or I've leased a Maserati. And it's not in your clothes because, honestly, everybody can get nice clothes. Everybody can lease that nice car. If you're ascending into the luxury world and want to be a luxury brand, whether you're a brokerage or an agent, having these things, that doesn't get you there. Because everything else that the consumer is seeing you do and having you touch them with are typically the same. It's not your title either. Katie, you introduced somebody to me last night as a top producer, and we talked about that. That's not a luxury term, being a top producer. What do you produce? You're selling my home. Right? There's no sensitivity there. Words like that don't really work anymore. Those acronyms after your name, they don't work anymore. They don't really distinguish you. And honestly, being a luxury agent is not tied to a price of a home. The quick story I want to tell you is I checked into a hotel about 3 weeks ago, and I had probably a luxury experience almost similar to what I have here in the Four Seasons. The room was amazing. It was a suite. unlike one I've ever been in before. When I checked in at the reception desk, there was a gourmet food stand that I could pick anything I want out of, and they handed it to me on a plate. Because I was, when you're especially a business traveler, they thought it's the little things. And I was really blown away by this Hyatt in that old marketplace in Omaha, Nebraska. And my room was $99. I had a luxury experience paying $99. So being luxury doesn't always mean price. It means a whole lot more. It means it could be tied to processes. It could be tied to other benefits that extend you to that place that you want to be. So I want to give you 10 things, okay? And I want to discuss these things and see if maybe we can come up with other things on top of just the simple things that I've come up with. The first thing that I think luxury brands assign them to is simplicity. The difference between walking into a Ross for Less and a Prada store, like immediately you see like the selections, there's less selection. They're not throwing a million things in your face. There's not 50,000 employees running around asking if they can help you every 2 seconds. Luxury is about simplicity. And I think this is the one slide I want to do on your websites. But that digital place that you guys have, where consumers go to learn about you or discover what you do or search for homes or whatever, tend to look more like Ross for Less than they do truly luxury brands. And I went to visit some of your sites last night, and they could all be better. They could all be simpler. And I think we have all fallen into the trap of more is less, when truthfully luxury is all about less is more. So what I decided to do, and I did this last night, is design what I think is the new modern day luxury website. So I did it for myself, but this is all the site has. A name, some contact information, a photograph, and something that I have never seen on an agent site before. And if you have this, please raise your hand and let's talk about it. But the 5 things that you do for me. Does anybody have a list of exactly what you do for a client when they hire you on your site? You've all been fooled into thinking that you need buyer tips and seller tips and listings and all this stuff when that's not what people are looking for. They actually want to know what you do. And here's the crazy thing. You might do what she does, and you might do what all the agents in your marketplace does, but none of them have a list of it on their website. If I'm going to your site, trust me on this, because I do tons of analytics. I don't need to see your listings, because I can go to Zillow and Realtor.com and Trulia and every other website in your marketplace. You don't need me to search for listings on your website. I can do that everywhere. What I need is something I can't do anywhere, which is actually discover what you will do for me. Now, I don't know what those things are necessarily, because I'm not a real estate agent. I had some ideas. I didn't want to put them down, because I didn't want to hold you to that fire. But like, for instance, how many of you here are listing agents? Like, that's really what you predominantly focus on. Would you ever take a listing, and be honest, be truthfully honest. You come to my home, I want to sell the house. You know that this house is worth 1.5. But I am so emotionally tied to that house, I want 2.8. And I want you to test the market with that. And you know that it's never going to fly. Would you take the listing?
Under a couple of circumstances. Number one, if you really needed to sell, and it was going to be a very quick test case. Number two, if it was positioned like on the busiest street. And number three, if I didn't have any listings at the time.
So those are the circumstances you would...
Not every one, but one of those could make me, I don't know if it's 2.8 for 1.5, that's a little extreme. But those are the times I might take something that...
And I know those extremes happen. I mean, they do in California. I know when I went to sell my house, I really thought it was worth about $800,000 more than it was. That was pretty extreme. Because I was going on a CMA that I had a couple of years prior. But, so I'm not judging that. But I want to know, is there anybody who, on principle, will not test the market when you know a house is not worth?
Yes.
That should be on your list.
I won't take it. I don't need practice.
That's number one on your list. Like, so I'm getting down to things that you are principled by, right? Like, how many people, you get phone calls all day, and I know they go to voicemail, right? But But there's got to be somebody here who hates phone calls going to voicemail and have done everything you can to make sure that the phone is answered by somebody. That should be on the list. Because you know what? What do people want? You've read the NAR surveys. They want to be answered immediately. They're not even willing to wait, 5 to 30 minutes or 1 hour or 2 hour or the national average, which is 48 hours, to be returned a call. How about that? This is what I'm talking about, folks. Simple little things. Like your list can be 5 things. I believe that this is a luxury website. Totally unencumbered by all the bullshit that has been sold to you by vendors and speakers and whatever, because I know for a fact, doing analytics, that no one even clicks on that stuff. The funny thing is, like when I do an analytic on a broker website, and I go to the agent roster, and I start looking at all the IP addresses, who's actually clicking on the agent roster? It's all the agents at the office clicking on the agent roster. It's not even consumers. Okay, so this is simple. It's simple. People come here to learn and find out about you, and this is you telling them exactly what to expect. So I think this is step 1. Get simple. Unclutter those sites of yours. Okay, the next thing is brands appeal to the senses. They think about appealing to their consumer senses. Does anybody know of, and I asked Matt Beal this, he had the funny, and every time you will see that font, you will think 1000 watt. Pan Am, right? That's a distinctive font. If I wrote my name in that, you go, that's Pan Am's typeface. Pan Am is long since gone, but how many of you still see Pan Am products being sold? Because somehow people still, despite what Pan Am went through, that conjures up a nostalgic thing that plays deep to the human psyche that people want to associate with. A typeface can do that. Airstream is now a typeface that you're seeing being used a lot on a lot of cool apps, like Pinterest and other apps are using an Airstream-like font. Again, it conjures up something inside of us. Yahoo, the same thing, right? So, and that's the official 1000 watt other font. We have actually 2. But finding a designer to simply, and I'm not talking about a kooky cursive font that no one can read, but most real estate fonts is either like it's a serif or a sans serif, like a Helvetica or a Times New Roman or some variation of it. But it's something simple and different that you could do to create your own typeface and just stick it on a business card, put it on different things, and it stands out. It makes you stand out. It's a little thing, but it makes you stand out. But that's a great segue to business cards. So I got handed a business card last night, and I kept it because I like the way it feels. This Ron Smith's business card from Leverage. It feels really good. I wonder how many of you have a card that feels good. And I want to talk about this for a minute because it's really important. How many things do you have in your world that is tangible, that you can give to a customer that's a piece of you that they can hold on to and touch and feel and remember? In the grand scheme of it all, almost nothing. Maybe a flyer, maybe a postcard, and a business card, a contract, which now they're all digital, right? So if you're using paperless software, Cardivy or .lu, people are just signing on your iPad. This is like the one thing that when you hand to somebody, they touch it and feel it. Could you imagine the power of having somebody go, wow, this is a great card. I like this card. Where'd you get it? Who did the printing? I love your font. Like, what a great segue into presenting yourself as different and as luxury. I did an experiment not too long ago, a few weeks ago actually. I had all the agents, I spoke to another luxury group, I had them all put their business cards in a hat. And I had somebody who worked for the hotel who was serving food. I called him up, I said, can you just feel in the hat and pull out whatever card feels luxury. She pulled out 4 cards out of 200 cards. And you heard a gasp in the room because that's reality. Everything else. So if you're spending 30 bucks on business cards, you can't spend another 20, 30 bucks to do letterpress, nice paper. I mean, I'll pass this around, or you should hand your card. I mean, it feels good. It feels luxury. And it plays to feel, because very little of what you guys have play to that sense. Okay? Taste, yes?
Don't you think business cards are on their last leg?
Shitty ones are. No. No. I held on to this. Well, I held on to it for several reasons. Ron would like to speak to me about Abercrombie and Fitch later. No, I held on to it because it played right to what I wanted to talk about today. But I'm going to save this card because I'm a design guy, I'm a brand guy. Like this, this is in my collection. But no, how many of you don't give out business cards anymore? I mean, most of you still do. Now, what you may think is the role of a business card is kind of passé because, truthfully, like very little information really needs to be on here anymore. I don't need your address, I don't need your fax number, I really just need your name and maybe a URL or a number to text you, right? But I think that the bigger mission of a card is to extend what you mean to the world. You're telling somebody a little bit of your story by the card you give. Hey, Laura, those concierge cards that you gave out yesterday, I spent 20 minutes yesterday just feeling them. You should pass them around. I mean, they're black, they're on beautiful paper with gold writing. They look luxury. Like, that's the point I want to make, that however limited you use it, when you do use it, you're giving people something more than just your contact. You're telling them how much you care about yourself to have not spent $19.95 for 2-day printing, right, on cheap, flimsy cards. That's the message. All right, this is wacky, right? How does real estate play to taste? What does real estate taste like? I thought it might be kind of cool to create your own signature drink. Maybe you think I'm nuts, but I want to talk about this a little bit because I've done this twice in real estate. I created the Better Teeny for Better Homes and Gardens, which now becomes their signature drink at every single Better Homes and Gardens party that they've thrown. And I just recently created, anybody know Susanna Murphy from Alante Real Estate in Cape Cod? You wouldn't, because she just started her brokerage about 8 months ago, and I've made her a pet project. I love her story. Grew up in Spain, didn't speak English, sent herself to Ireland to learn English, spent 2 years in college, studied English, studied business, went to England, got her 4-year degree and was recruited by Fidelity to come to America to work. Very bright lady. And she became a real estate agent, and then last year at Thanksgiving decided to start a brokerage. And she called me up out of the blue, wanted to just bounce a couple of brand names off me. I didn't like any of them. She wanted to call her company Elite Realty, and I didn't like it. Because the thing about brands is, if you want to sell Elite, you should never call it Elite. You should never say it. It should never appear in your messaging. It should be something that happens after working with you that you go, man, I had an elite experience. That's how brands, you don't put the words in my mouth, you put the emotions in my heart, and the words will come out of my mouth myself. So I said, if you want to create something elite, don't call it elite. That already makes it not elite. So I did a little discovery with her and found out that in her little home in Spain, where it was a small little coastal town, when people would knock on the door, the person inside the door would say Alante, which meant, welcome, come on in. And I thought, man, that's the perfect name for your company. So we came up with Alante, we came up with a font and a thing, and then 2 weeks ago she called me up and said, what can I do next? I said, create a drink. Now her brand is a sexy brand. Like, she's a sexy woman. And she's all about romance and just a very interesting take on how she's doing real estate. Even the stuff she's doing on her own, or just have a sexiness, a love factor to it. So I wanted to play on that a little bit, and I said, why don't you come up with a drink called Two to Tango? And here's what I want you to do. Go to a local bar on a Friday night and find like the most popular bar. Just get there early enough to where you can get the bartender, and knowing her and her charm, she'd be able to talk the bartender into creating a drink for her. And I said, go in there with the name and tell him what you want to do. Sure enough, she sent me video from that night. By the end of the experiment, where the bartender kept mixing different concoctions to create this Two to Tango, she sent me a photo or video of 24 people in the bar all toasting to Alante. Now, if you think that there isn't power in that, So now the bar, this local bar, this may not work in Los Angeles or in New York City, but in smaller towns like Jackson Hole, where there's just common downtown that everybody congregates, you create a signature brand drink that a bar helped you create, that they can take ownership of. That can extend far wider than you can ever imagine. And it also plays to taste. So do you guys think this is kind of kooky, some of you? Or is this possible? Right? So where do you come from in doing it? She's Spanish, so we started with sangria. We started with ingredients that she loved. Like you guys from Hawaii. There's a Four Seasons in Kona. When I walked in, the first thing they served me is a drink. There's the hotel's signature drink. That hotel now has a taste. This hotel has a drink. It's not that preposterous that you as a brand to create something just slightly different that stands out could potentially play to this idea. So, playing off of that, I figured let's go to scent, smell. What does real estate smell like? Does real estate have a smell? I think it does. How many of you guys who take listings tell your clients at an open house to burn some potpourri on the stove? Or bake a pie? Right? Come on, guys, you gotta be thinking about this. Light the fireplace. People walk into the home, they should smell that aroma of home. Why can't that aroma be your aroma? Could you not create a custom scent just for you? I'm sure that if you think about like where you're located, there are scents that are very sort of indigenous to where you're from. Like here in the Southwest, you smell that pinon or that juniper wood every night. Like it's in my head now. When I go back home to Portland, I'm gonna want to find incense because I like that smell and I want to relive being here when I go back home. So this is what I want to play to. If you created your own signature scent, let's just say it's vanilla, sandalwood, cedar, whatever, and you have that burning in open houses, you have that burning in your office, you have that playing out in the world. I'm just imagining this. People coming to an open house and they walk in and they just smell the smell of that house and go, wow, what is that? Oh, that's, you know, that's our signature scent. When you give them that box of candles as a closing gift, every time they light that candle, what do they relive? That moment when they discovered their dream home. Can anybody think of anything else that plays to like taste and smell and sight and feel? These senses, like these are very powerful drivers that stay in people's psyche forever. Like if you grew up in the 60s and you hear Loving Spoonful, like it just brings you back to being a kid again. Same if you grew up in the 70s or 80s. These things do the same thing. They make you stand out. There's nobody else even thinking about this. So what about sound? What does real estate sound like? This might be the most controversial part of the presentation. But what's the sound of real estate?
Chaos.
Chaos.
Sorry.
No, listen,
The ocean, it could be a breeze, it could be the hustle and bustle of New York City, depends on what it is.
That's really true. When I moved to downtown Portland from quiet little town of California, the first thing I noticed in that apartment was the sound of the street. My wife and kids sort of freaked out about it. To me, it was a coming home again from having grown up in Manhattan. I miss that sound. Sound is really very important. So this is where I wanted to go with sound. How many of you give a listing presentation?
Interesting.
Right? That's the first sound a seller hears from you. When you sit down and for 1 hour talk about you. And I've been through 6 or 7 listing presentations from homes I've sold. And I've been through dozens and dozens and dozens of them as I've been asked to try to recreate and redesign them for brokerages. And almost every one I see is really 30 minutes to 1 hour of about you. And that's what real estate sounds like. Me, 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 me. An Italian opera. So I want to ask you guys a question, right? Do you think that's a sound consumers really want to hear? Can you imagine going to a doctor and all you want to do is tell him how you feel, but he's talking for an hour about himself and where he went to school and how successful he is? Right? It would blow your mind. You'd get up and leave. Or you would say, hey, can you shut up? I want to tell you why my foot hurts. Because I have a bolt in it. By the way, is Jeff not Superman or what? So I'm going to even question whether you ever even need to take this out. And here's my point. When you go to a Greasy Spoon diner and you order your meal, right, the server is writing it down. But when you go to a how many of you were at dinner last night with all of us? Did you see the servers writing anything down? They remember everything. That's the difference between a professional and a chump. That's the difference between luxury and non-luxury. Like if you can't, I believe if you can't go in and riff without a presentation, I'm not saying to not have one. I think it's good to have one in your back pocket, just in case somebody wants to go, hey, you know that data you're talking about, I want to see some proof, right? But to be able to stand there eye to eye and talk to them. And I'm not even saying to talk to them about you. I'm saying to change the sound of that listing presentation and walk into a home and sit down with the buyer and seller and say, wow, this is a magical time for you. You're about to sell this home. Tell me about your home. Tell me about where you're going. Tell me about this journey you're on. Walk me through every room and talk to me about it, and then you be quiet. And I think that's the new sound of real estate. Because I saw this article, 50 tips for an awesome real estate newsletter. 56 more things you could stick on a listing presentation, on an awesome real estate, more pages. Here's my one tip. Be quiet. Talk less. The sound of silence could be a beautiful sound for real estate. Just listen. In the creative world that I live in, we call it, there's a clinical term, it's called discovery. It's the first thing we do with a client. We fly down to their office and spend a day listening. And we get them talking, and we ask questions to keep that conversation going, but we hardly do any talking. We do a lot of listening. And at the end of that day, that client feels so good getting it all off their chest and telling us their whole story, but more importantly, you learn so much about how you can treat them moving forward that it's pretty awe-inspiring. And I think this could be a good next move as you move into luxury or further into luxury. I think creating a very memorable first impression is that perfect segue from that, because that is a good first impression for sellers. But I was also thinking, like, you know, you're working with buyers. What can you do here that could just sort of be some gesture that make them go, wow, you're so different than everybody else. So just for you guys who deal with buyers all the time, when you first meet them, what's the first thing you do when you greet a potential buyer?
Make them laugh.
Make them laugh, tell a joke, hand them a business card, you know, the 1995 two-day chintzy business card, shake their hand, put them in your car, drive them around. But that's what everybody does, right? It's standard. So I want to go to someplace different. And I'm going to ask you to reach into your pocketbooks for this, because sometimes creating brand requires an investment. Why couldn't you show up with some killer swag? There's something cool. Right? They're not even with you yet, right? We know that buyers are elusive, but why are buyers elusive? I think it's because you haven't done enough to really make them want to be with you. So could you not show up? Could you not invest in some really cool stuff? So here's some ideas for stuff. And since I don't know most of you that well to know like what your brands really stand for, so I'm just being a little generic here. But I do know, like, when I went looking for houses in Southern California, my agent gave me Dasani water to drink. Like, I could have gotten my own Dasani water. There's nothing special about this. It comes out of a, where does Dasani even come from? It's filtered tap water. What about giving your customers this? You guys know what this is? There's somebody in this room who's behind. Paul, stand up a second. This is Paul's product. This is the best water in the world. It comes in a bottle. Can you imagine swinging this out of your back seat and going, hey, we're going to be driving around Palm Springs today. It's hot. Here's some amazing water, not Dasani water. Or you could take it one step further and pour this water inside a branded canteen. Like, hey, Franks, I hope you don't mind, but I thought, you know, you sell real estate here in the desert, right? So if you got a desert-themed canteen that was cool that had your brand on it. Like, what do these things really cost you? 20, 30 bucks to create, so you get 100 canteens. I mean, when you think about how much money you spend in marketing in general, this is branding. Now somebody has a piece of you, a gift. You gave them a gift, they haven't even given you their business yet. But I've just learned enough about being in business all my years that when you give, you get. Even when you haven't really gotten a signed agreement yet. This is something real estate people don't do. They hold on to their money really tightly. They don't even spend it. I mean, you heard Barbara talk about her partner. Didn't want to spend a dime. I mean, Barbara knew. The secret to her success is you got to spend a portion of that money on things that really matter. And buying SEO, buying traffic, spending money on kooky email newsletters and all that real estate vendor garbage that you just flood people's inbox with, save that and do this. People will hang this in their house, right? So that's for Frank. And what about if you sell real estate in Seattle? Now here's the interesting thing about Seattle. It not only rains a lot, but marijuana is legal. So I thought how to tie the two things together and give people blunts. And for those of you who don't know what a blunt is, Katie, you want to stand up and explain what... I'm not exactly sure what it is, but I think it has something to do with a cigar or a cigarette where you take the tobacco out and fill it with weed. But if you were an agent handing out blunts in Seattle, you'd be a rock star. The blunt, by the way, is the world's greatest umbrella. They're made in Germany and they're super cool and they're not that expensive. But this works well for, you know, unfortunately, for those of you out of Colorado, it doesn't rain that much there. So, you know, you may have to give out real blunts. But what a cool little thing. You're going out with a client on a rainy day and you don't know if they're going to be with you or not long term, but you hand them one of these things. I think that they will remember that for as long as they have that. The best sun, I mean, this is luxury, guys. This is about 30, 40 bucks a tube. But like, again, walking around in the sun all day in Palm Springs, Miami, in places where there's, in the summertime, to give this as a gesture of kindness. I know this isn't deep. I didn't go intellectually deep here. I'm just going creative today. If I were an agent in San Francisco, you would bet that this is a messenger bag company out of San Francisco. I'd get these bags, I'd put my brand on it. I'd order 100 of these things, and when I go meet up with a buyer, you can bet that if I have those MLS papers of listings, I'd have them in the bag. And I'd give them the bag with the listings, and they'll take that bag and use it every day with my name on it. And unless I smell or I say things horribly offensive, I can't imagine a situation where this person wouldn't feel a connection with me, because I gave that person something that meant something to them. Or if you're in Jackson Hole or Big Sky, why not just give them a little leather saddlebag and put your brand on it? So I thought it might be cool, like raise your hand if you want to just yell out where you're from, and maybe the audience can jam on an idea for you.
Laguna Beach.
Okay, Laguna Beach, California. What's that? Something surfy, something beachy. I mean, the suntan lotion can play well to that.
A visor for like the sun.
A visor, but like if I would do a visor, I'd get something nice. Like I'd go to Oakley, or I'd go to like some Maui gym or some nicer brand. Like this is where you spend money. And I tell you, like if you're spending $100 or $300 a month on a cluttered, crappy website that doesn't really get you much, you could just invest that yearly money into some killer swag. Anybody else want to throw up a place?
Vegas.
Vegas. Wow. Yeah. No, I get them a checkbook inside of a case that has a lock and key that you keep. So that's a good one. Like, and I can't come up with it on the spot, but anybody, I put some thought into this stuff. Sometimes I can. Some deck of playing cards could be kind of cool. It's
For a hangover cure.
What's that?
A recipe for a hangover cure.
Now that's clever.
What'd she say?
Tickets to a cool show. I mean, I'm saying this is something you give. That may be a little bit forward in thinking about a buyer for the first time. But like, I'll think about Vegas. I don't necessarily have something off the cuff. But if, what's that? Chicago. The Bears.
Blackhawk.
If it wasn't for those the winter, I would live in Chicago. I love that city. So it's northwest, it's cold. I would, you know, when I got here on Monday, I think it was Monday, right? Concierge handed out these gorgeous little fleece jackets, black with their logo on it. That was a nice gesture, and we all of us in the concierge group needed that, because none of us brought that type of coat with us. So a simple little nice fleece jacket might play really well in Chicago, especially since I think in the spring and sometimes in the summer and fall, those microclimates and the weather changes pretty drastically. You got to wear layers. So I think along those lines, that's just swag, right? Okay. So we've created some first impressions. Okay, I'm not here to tell you how to market yourself better, right? That's really something I need to know you a lot more to tell you to do. I'm not giving you those kinds of tactics. I'm just giving you cool, creative ideas. I'm playing the game of what my company does, which is branding, which is giving, it's like, you know, the Wizard of Oz, the Scarecrow, when he got a brain and the Tin Man got his heart. That's kind of what I want to share with this stuff. So creating lasting memories is the last piece I want to go to. What has made Apple, that retail store, such a moneymaker? It played the game that F.A.R. Schwartz did, right? It made everything really available. The way I look at it is like they reduced the friction. They reduced friction in retail. And where's the friction in retail? It's A, access to product, and B, paying. Like, who wants to stand on a line and wait and wait? If you haven't shopped at Apple, the coolest thing are these people that walk around with their iPhone and they just, with a Square card, just take your payment and email you the receipt, and you're in and out before you know it. They have thought about, this is how they think, how can we move friction from the experience? They did this with their technology, and now they're doing this terrestrially. So where is the friction in real estate? I think there's so much friction in real estate that we can begin to eradicate. There's friction that you've solved by answering your phone and making sure people can get you when they need you. That's a friction point. Getting your answering machine and hearing a message like, I'm away from my desk or on the other line. Like, how does that help anybody? That even says to me, you're not even sure what you're doing. So it's unclear. So think about friction. Think about, okay, digitally, where's friction? On your website where I want to contact you and all I get's a form. It's just a form. I can't even see your email address. There's no phone number. I don't know how that ever happened in real estate. But you got to go back and examine your site and make sure that your phone number is on every single page on the header. Because you want phone calls, right? You want to make sure that your email address is right there, mark@markdavison.com, so that I can easily trigger an email. Where else is there friction? Are you guys familiar with the battle that's raging in real estate on Agent Match and Realtor.com? It's insane. The consumer wants to know how many sales you made last year. They really want to know that, and so many people in real estate really don't want people to know that. And that makes no sense to me. And I don't want to get into a political debate about it, but like, if you want customers to like you and love you, you got to give them what they want. Brands know that. So you need to think about elements. Can you guys think about areas in your business where there's friction? All of that paperwork. So how many people here use Dotloop or Cardivi? So there were two, again, I'm not hawking vendors, but paperwork is a bitch for consumers. They don't like it. People don't have fax machines at home to fax back a document. It's all about electronic, digital signatures, digital paperwork. So there's really two companies that have mastered this, is Cardivi and Dotloop. Two completely different concepts. With Cardivi, you're basically attaching PDFs and emailing PDFs back and forth. I think that that's friction too. That's just taking the crappy experience that's offline and just creating an equally crappy digital experience. Dotloop is different. The document just stays in the cloud. And you log in, you sign it, and then somebody else has the same permission to log in and also sign it, or make a change on the document. So the document isn't getting emailed. There's no PDFs being emailed back and forth. It's in one place. It removes friction from your lives. It removes frictions from your customers' lives. You hand them this isn't like 2007. You can hand people an iPad and go, here, sign here, and they're not going to question you anymore. There's friction there. Where else is there friction? This showings. Where's the friction in showings?
It's different all over the country, but in ours, you got to make an appointment. You have two brokers and a buyer and a seller. Everyone needs to be able to do it at the same time.
I'm not certain that there's even a technological solution to that yet, but here's what I do know. That when I look at companies like Cardivi, like Dotloop, like many others, their founders were real estate agents. And this taps into what I talked about last year. If you recognize a problem, you could be the solution. I'm not saying to do that, because you're not in the business of being technologists or software creators, but keep an eye out. Or if you know of anybody, suggest these solutions, because
Concierge is doing something when they do their process, which is, it's very specific and everyone knows where you stand. There's a period of time that you get to see the property, and it's available, and they've got someone there. So they're on to something.
I think even the idea of making offers in like a auction type experience it's reducing a big friction in the real estate sale I mean, the last thing you want to know as a buyer is that you've just made an offer and then you find out 2 days later you're one of 50 offers. Like, really? Well, why didn't I know that? And now what do I do? And you know what happened in the past? Agents would say, it's soft, it's simple, it's cool, it's calm. Right? Luxury has good self-esteem. And if you want to give something cool, this might be the coolest thing I could think of. The Nest smoke alarm. What is it? There you go. The guy that has everything doesn't have this. I'm not going to even say that this is better, because building brand and creating luxury doesn't always mean that the product is better. Katie was telling me a story last night. You want to share it about valet parking?
Well, I just feel like valet parking is one of life's little luxuries. So we have a lot of very expensive resorts in Hawaii, and what a lot of people don't realize is they actually don't charge you for valet service. So it's up to you to give a tip at what you think is fair. But for $5, I'm always pulling my car right out and letting them take it and bring it back to me. I'm not walking anywhere because it's literally free for the whatever tip I want to give, but it's one of life's little luxuries. Like, why on earth would I walk from elsewhere?
It truly is like one of life's little luxuries, especially if you're in LA or New York or Chicago, where like parking is really a bitch and the weather is terrible. See, this is what I'm saying, guys. Selling a $10 million home is not luxury. Doing a very cool gesture or making somebody's life just a tad bit simpler, or giving somebody something really cool, is also as much of luxury as anything else. So this thing is just a newfangled smoke alarm that, when your smoke alarm goes off in your house, you have all your kids or you and your husband or wife have to run to the smoke alarm with a towel and go like this to get it to stop. This, you just walk over to it and wave, and it'll stop. It also talks to you. At night when you get up, if you have one in your bedroom and you want to go to the bathroom, a little blue light will shine right down and shine your path. And also, it's tied to an application. So if you're at work and your house is on fire, it'll send you an alert. So once again, like...
If you're on vacation, will it tell you somebody's walking to the bathroom?
It may. So I'll just leave you with this silly quote, because we all went to this dinner the other night and we had to pick our seats based upon pictures of celebrities that are supposed to be our doppelgangers. So can you imagine, mine was like not Paul Newman, but mine was Woody Allen. But the young Woody Allen, not the older, more deviant Woody Allen. Right? And he said, if you're not failing every now and again, it's a sign you're not doing anything very innovative. What I just want to impart to you is these are kooky ideas, but they're good ideas. Make them your own. I'm just feeding your mind with possibilities. Don't do any of these. Go off and do your own things. But like, you've already started by being different, using this service. You're only one of, you're 200 of a million agents who have been open-minded enough to do something different, take it to the next step and do things that are truly tangible that will change people's lives, and I think it'll make a big difference. And we'll see where you are next time I come. That's it. Thank you very much.